Good morning, everybody. I'm Melissa Wenzel. I'm the Built Environment Sustainability Administrator at our environmental agency, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. It is the deepest honor of my life to have you all here. It means so much that people supported us having the conference in St. Paul, to have record in-person attendance, to have people from 3 different continents join us today. And raise your hand if you are based here in Minnesota. Take a look around. I wore Minnesota earrings for all of you today. I challenge the next state where the conference will be, which I don't know, to bring over 100 people from your state to the conference. So give a round of applause, Minnesotan. We have a guiding principle in Minnesota called the Minnesota Climate Action Framework that has built environment sustainability initiatives built in. It is the boldest and strongest thing we have in Minnesota that guides cities, counties, other governments, tribal nations, private, public, you name it, to have vision for a more sustainable built environment. This image is within the Build Reuse Wiki, so if you want to see it and have a copy of it and use it as widely as you want to, because government creates it, government is free for folks to use, check it out. This is our material management system, building material management system here in Minnesota. We actually had people from the industry put up post-it notes of who they are, where they are, what industry they're representing. And we made this image to show how complex, possibly linear, hopefully circular, our built environment economy can be. I showed this slide yesterday in a smaller session, but we at the Pollution Control Agency, we don't do the work. We work with people who do the work. So people praise me all the time, and I'm not a humble person. I'll take praise. I'm proud of this conference, but I'm proud of the work that others are doing. And I get to highlight that and lift people up and support them and connect them. And I do that, of course, across the nation and now, a bit more globally. It's a joy to be able to find people who are just so passionate. They're in the room, of course, people who raise their hand. I don't know all of you Minnesotans, so I'm going to get to know those of you that I don't know yet at some point. But it takes an amazing amount of people doing an amazing amount of work to make our built environment more sustainable. I jumped on the bandwagon when I first heard this all for reuse ecosystem map. And yes, I have the time to list organizations in Minnesota. So we've been a shining example for the different opportunities that exist around the state. But since the last time I pulled the screenshot, I hadn't seen so many other dots in so many other states. So kudos on all of you for recognizing these industries. Last night, I wanted to figure out how many organizations. I know how many contacts I have in Minnesota and outside. Excel spreadsheet, my digital Rolodex. We partner at our agency with 179 separate organizations. And I didn't even know that until I did this last night. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of change. And it's incredible to know that that's just now. It'll continue to grow because I don't know everything and everyone, but I know a lot of great people doing a lot of great work. And that includes people here in St. Paul. It's my honor to introduce both Melvin Carter, our mayor, proud mayor of St. Paul, and our Chief Resiliency Officer, Russ Stark.
Good morning.
Morning.
How's everyone doing? We are thrilled to have you here in St. Paul. I'm Russ Stark. I am the city's Chief Resilience Officer. And I get the pleasure first of introducing Mayor, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit afterwards about some of the work that we're doing in a little bit more detail. I've been in my role since Mayor got elected almost 8 years ago now. He and I actually got elected to the St. Paul City Council at the same time about 18 years ago and served together on the council. And as Mayor likes to say, I built a to-do list for my 10 years on the council that I've now been trying to implement in my current role. And it's been an honor and a privilege to be able to do that. So without further ado, Mayor Carter is is it 45th? 46th mayor of the city of St. Paul, and a fourth generation St. Paulite, a third generation Melvin Carter. And he is, we are in the last year of a second term, and we've built quite a body of work around climate and sustainability that we're really proud of. And he's going to tell you about some of that and do a much better welcome than I can. So without further ado, Mayor Melvin Carter.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank you. And good morning and welcome to St. Paul. It's so incredible to have you guys here for the Deconstructing and Reuse Conference. It's an honor for us. As Russ said, we are very proud of the work that we have done to protect our climate, to protect our environment, and to address the impacts of climate crisis in our community. You know, I show up sometimes around in the coast and DC and different areas talking about climate crisis. And sometimes people look at me and say, hey, you're not a coastal mayor. What are you doing talking about climate crisis? And honestly, even in our city, for those of you who are Minnesotans, I saw a lot of hands go up. It's good to see you all. There are people who look at us and say, what are you doing? You know, like, we're not a climate, you know, we're not a coastal place. You know, we're not one of those like climate impact places. And it's always incredible because I like to remind folks, you know, sure, you know, we don't really connect the dots sometimes to some of the challenges that we face to our climate crisis, but we feel them right here. If you grew up in Minnesota, you know that winters are a lot different these days than they were. When I was a kid, it would sort of freeze somewhere around October and thaw somewhere around June. These days it freezes in October and thaws in October. And it freezes in November and thaws in November. It freezes in December. And we realize that our streets seem to have more potholes than they used to. But it's sometimes hard for us to connect that's because, like, if we just kept unplugging and plugging in our freezers, that's what winter is doing to us nowadays. So we're feeling that. We're seeing more instances of flooding on our river than we ever have before. And we're seeing a longer and more pronounced droughts than we ever have before. I know that in my first year as mayor, I will never forget that on the last Saturday in April, we saw about 400,000 pounds of limestone on one of those iconic bluffs across the river from us fall onto one of our busiest streets. The reason I'll never forget that was the last weekend in April is because had it been the first weekend in May, 1 week later, it could have impacted our annual Cinco de Mayo parade, and you would have already heard about that crisis. And so we experience an enormous set of climate challenges in our community. But we don't always connect the dots and realize those events, and let me be really clear, the millions and millions of dollars, of taxpayer dollars that we are forced to allocate to address those events are the direct result of our climate crisis that's happened in our community. We're thrilled today to be able to host you here in our iconic Landmark Center building. Where historic preservation sort of first found its legs back in the 70s. This beautiful building that you're in right now is a former federal courthouse that was slated for demolition in 1970 before a group of residents and community leaders organized to save it. It's always incredible to me to look at the richness of this building and realize someone wanted to tear this down instead of saving it, renovating it, and preserving it for us to be able to experience it here today. St. Paul is also a home of 10 historic districts, including our one-of-a-kind Summit Avenue district, the longest stretch of historic mansions in the country. Here in St. Paul, we take seriously the opportunity and the responsibility to reuse buildings and building materials when we can, both to preserve some of our history and to maximize the longevity of those older building materials and structures, including the substantial embodied carbon that they contain. Right now, we're laser focused on repurposing some of our downtown office core that was forever changed by COVID-19, with a specific emphasis on office to residential conversions. Some conversions like that are already very familiar territory in our city, including our Lower Town district on the other side of downtown, where over 30 years, nearly all of the older office and warehouse spaces have been converted to residential and mixed-use spaces. Beyond building reuse, we're also very serious in St. Paul about reducing carbon emissions across our community, and our downtown is no exception. This building is one of hundreds served by District Energy St. Paul with heating and cooling services using a network of hot and cold water pipes under our downtown streets. District Energy already offers net zero carbon cooling to its customers, and their heating and hot water is fueled by 1/2 wood waste and half by fossil gas. But we are partnering with them on plans to make the whole system carbon neutral in the future. Here in St. Paul, we also have our sustainable building ordinance. Russ wasn't lying to you when he said he spent a decade creating his bucket list of the things that he would do if he ever got into the role that he's in now. So one of the first things that we did when I got elected mayor was, years ago, a number of cities got those grants to create a chief resilience officer in those cities. We were not one of those cities. We just decided it's a value for us. And so early on, we set up 3 what we call core values of our administration: resilience, innovation, and equity. And those are the 3 things that we looked and said, hey, listen, if I can show you the equity staff in that office over there, if I can show you the innovation staff in that office over there, if I can show you the climate staff, the 3 people in the office on the 4th floor, that's how you know for sure we're not really, really serious about those 3 goals. Those 3 things can't just be a body of work that somebody does. It's got to be a lens through which we view all of our work. That's something that was core for us, and that's the role that Russ takes on to make sure that we're establishing that as a culture in our city. That's guided by our sustainable building ordinance, one of the strongest in the country, that requires new city buildings and new developments receiving $200,000 or more in public financing to meet much higher standards for green construction, including materials reuse from any on-site demolition. In new city buildings, our ordinance means we are investing in new geothermal heating and cooling systems and rooftop solar to get as close to net zero carbon as possible for our city buildings operations. And all of this comes together in our overall climate action and resilience plan, through which we're working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 from a 2015 baseline and down to net zero by 2050. Out at the Heights, it's a former golf course. We're building out what will be the state's largest networked geothermal heating and cooling system for what will be the state's largest all-electric development. Xcel Energy, another great utility partner that we have here, is currently building their new gas operations headquarters at the Heights, and it will be heated by a geothermal system, not natural gas. Last fall, and this was a sign of Russ's effectiveness, I went into Russ's office to apologize to him because the news came out that the city of St. Paul had purchased and ordered St. Paul or Minnesota's first fully electric fire truck. And I hadn't looped Russ in on them. I think you learned about it then in the news, is that right? And Russ, who I always called our green Jiminy Cricket in St. Paul for a decade, looked up and said, you know what? It's an incredible day when we can buy an electric fire truck and I don't hear about it until I see it in the news. So last fall, we put that into service, our state's first all-electric fire truck, and we are waiting right now to take delivery on the state's second fully electric fire truck. We're excited about that, not just because it's electric and not just because of its footprint. As mayor, you learn a whole lot of stuff that nobody ever needs to know. And I love sharing with folks that it's not just better because it's electric and it has a smaller carbon footprint. It's better because it's better. It's smaller. It doesn't have to carry around that big diesel engine. And one of the things you learn about fire trucks is that diesel engine actually splits duties between driving the truck and pumping the water. So if a house is on fire, our fire truck can pull up. They take that diesel engine and they switch it from driving the truck to pumping the water. They start priming the pump, and when the pump is primed, then they can start putting water on it. If we have an electric fire truck that doesn't have that conflict, they can actually start putting water on a fire before the thing even parks, as they're pulling up to the space. So it actually provides a level of service that we cannot provide with the other ones, which is one of the reasons why we're excited to buy the second one. In 2022, we partnered to create EV Car Share, the country's biggest electric car share program, allowing thousands of our residents to take carbon-free trips around town every month and making it possible for them to own fewer cars, yielding significant savings to household budgets. Have you seen those EV cars around town? I always love to tell folks, if you live in St. Paul, for all of you St. Paul residents, you own 171 electric vehicles or something like that. How many? 100?
You got it.
Something like that. Russ is, I'm sure I was wrong, but Russ said, yes, that's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well,
That's right. We are currently partnering with Emerge and Second Chance to launch a furniture recycling pilot this fall. Furniture is our largest category of bulky and illegally dumped items, with over 1,000 items collected per month. So through this pilot, we'll evaluate for reuse, and items that cannot be reused will be disassembled and recycled. The goal for reuse is to open a store at the solid waste and recycling facility where residents can purchase items at a very low or at no cost. This is all part of a larger initiative to identify opportunities for the reuse and recycling of items collected as bulky or illegally dumped, working towards our city's waste diversion goal to reduce expenses. We already recycle mattresses, electronics, and appliances that are collected as bulky or illegally dumped. While these last examples of our climate resilience work are not directly about building reuse, I'm illustrating that your work, your important work, increasing the reuse of buildings and building materials, is a critically important component of our collective task, which is to stabilize our climate and then find our way back from the constant weather emergencies which we now find ourselves. I talked about the weather being different these days than it was when I was growing up. I grew up in St. Paul, and just a couple of summers ago, I learned a new phrase: air quality alert. I never heard that when I was a kid. We never stayed in from recess because the air quality wasn't good enough for us to run and play outside. I didn't, as somebody who's born and raised in this city, I didn't grow up in that. Yet we have them time and time and time again now. It's been a massive new trend for us. These Canadian wildfires in the summer, the smoke coming in, the hazy skies are all part of a reality that my children have to face that I never did. And you have to understand, see, Minnesotans, we like to say that we like winter. We brag that we like winter. We like to send our friends down south pictures of us out sledding or out skiing or out doing something. But our historically short summers were a time that we cherished here to relax, breathe, and enjoy the outdoors. And the combination of hotter summers and bad air quality are fundamentally shifting what it means to live, work, and play in the state. Something we highly value is just being taken from us, from all of us. When we think about climate change and other things like this, one of the truisms is it feels like every couple of months I turn on CNN and I see that somebody did a study that found out that as bad as we thought the impacts of climate crisis were going to be, and as soon as we thought they were going to come, we were wrong. They were worse and sooner and more immediate than we ever thought. You see that article over and over again. And let me tell you, I could make every argument that St. Paul is the center of the universe, right? That this city is important, that this city is significant. And as the mayor of a city of 300,000 people, when I see those articles, sometimes it feels disempowering. It feels like this is too big for us to try to take on. It feels like it's easy to say, there's nothing we can do about this. There's nothing I can do about this. It's too late. I'm here to tell you that's not true. And what the world needs more than almost anything else is for this group of people in this room to walk out of this conference feeling empowered, feeling connected, and knowing that you're not alone in this work. You're doing this alongside colleagues all across this state, colleagues all across this country, colleagues even in Kenya who are leading to make sure that we have a planet to pass on to our children. All of the things that I just shared with you and all the things I love bragging on our city have one thing in common. The most fragile moment for them was the moment in my head when it felt impossible. For everything that I just said, the EV car share system, can I tell them? The EV car share system, we knew was impossible. We knew it was impossible. We were actually putting together a grant for to submit to Bloomberg Philanthropies, and we wanted to put in something just to show them we're big thinkers, right? We wanted to put in some like moonshot thing well, Russ probably was just tricking me, but I thought it was impossible. And so I say that all just to say that I know that each and every one of you has some idea in your back pocket, some idea in your bottom drawer that you know would be amazing, but you know is too impossible to take on. My challenge to you is pull that thing off, dust it out, and breathe life into it, because if you don't, no one will. Before I go, I just want to do one more thing. I just need to recognize Melissa Wenzel, who's one of your local hosts. Oh, you know Melissa. Melissa is a longtime St. Paul resident who was one of our inaugural co-chairs of the city's Climate Justice Advisory Board, a body we created in 2021 to help ensure that our climate work centers the needs of our most vulnerable residents. Melissa, I just want to say thank you. I want to just publicly say thank you for your service and for everything you can continue to do in St. Paul, and everything that you've done to make sure that we get a chance to roll out a red carpet for our amazing guests this week. Thank you so much. One more round of applause. Thank you, Melissa, for your work. Thank you, Russ, for your work. Thank you all for your work. Inspire one another, connect with one another, partner with one another, network with one another, and most importantly of all, as you finish your conference and finish the business day, get out into the community with one another and spend lots and lots and lots of money in St. Paul. Thanks for coming.
I swear for 20 years of my life, I've been making the same mistake over and over again, which is to speak after that man. Definition of insanity. Right, slides. Sorry,
PDFs, I think it's just a scroll.
just a scroll. Okay. All right, so I've got some graphics and images to kind of put a little bit of meat on the bones of some of what Mayor talked about for a few minutes. So bear with me. The Mayor talked about this, but our Climate Action Resilience Plan, which dates back to 2019 now, sets these really kind of high-level goals of 50% emission reduction community-wide by 2030 and net zero by 2050. In 2019, 2030 still seemed a little ways away, and now it's literally just right around the corner. Good news is we're pretty close. Honestly, we're pretty close to being on track. There's still a lot more to do, and not having a federal partner is not going to make that easier. But we're doing everything we can on that front. Mayor talked about this quite a bit in terms of the specific climate change that we're experiencing here in St. Paul and Minnesota. Just a few more little factoids there. Record summer flooding, both 2019 and again in 2024 along the Mississippi here. The number of air quality alerts that are unprecedented. This is the second in 3 summers where it's been a major issue. 2023, our beloved Twin Cities Marathon, which takes place, mind you, in October, was canceled for heat. It was 90 degrees and humid that day, and it was just shut down. For those of you that track this issue, you'll know that one of the big things happening in the world is insurance companies are, many of them, losing their shirts, honestly, because of climate change. And one of the big impacts here locally is specifically the impact of hailstorm damage in the upper Midwest. And that's affecting everyone and our insurance rates. In 2024, we had the wettest July and the driest September, 3 months apart. And so, Mayor talked about that trend as well. We really think here in St. Paul about who among our residents are most vulnerable to these changes, and where in the city, what parts of the city are most vulnerable to these changes. And so this map kind of highlights in red those areas that we think are most vulnerable to the combination of climate change, urban heat island, exposure to bad air quality, flood exposure, and that sort of thing. And so it really kind of focuses our attention in some of these zones of the city in terms of where we need to really help folks think about systems that are going to make a big impact there. This is typical of cities in the US. When we track our greenhouse gas emissions across the community, we're tracking what's called Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. You all probably have talked about this. Most of us don't track Scope 3 yet, and Scope 3 is what you all work on. I was recently able to be at a conference in Europe actually talking about that issue. And there are some cities in Europe, as you may know, that are starting to really track very specifically, or trying to, their Scope 3 emissions, which is challenging because it's literally like everything you consume in that, within that geography, every building material, all those things. But when we just look at Scope 1 and Scope 2, the vast majority of greenhouse gas emissions come from the energy we use in buildings, and then secondarily in transportation. If we looked at Scope 3, this waste side of the equation would look much, much bigger. But we have so much work to do in these other sectors that we haven't had the ability to go down to that next level. We are really excited about our St. Paul Climate Action Dashboard. Here's the front page of it. I encourage you to take a look if you get a chance. St. Paul. I always forget the URL. You'll find it if you just look at St. Paul Climate Action Dashboard. climateaction.stpaul.gov. Anyway, so we're tracking our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions here at the bottom. You're not going to be able to see the detail, but you can see that from where we started in pink, we've made some progress in blue, and the green is our 2030 goal. So we are relatively close to being on track. Mayor talked about the Heights. This is a former golf course in the far corner of the city that we're converting to this all-electric new development, combination of housing and light industrial. Mayor talked about the Xcel Energy piece of it. Here's under construction what will be 140 Habitat for Humanity homes, biggest project for Habitat in their history in Minnesota. Thousands upon thousands of volunteers. This was the national Habitat build last fall, and progress continues out there. In our own buildings, the thing that we have most control over our municipal buildings, we've reduced emissions over 36%. And actually, we've got some updated numbers that say that this number is already a bit higher last year. You can see here in orange that our emissions reductions are happening largely because electricity is getting cleaner and we're using it more efficiently. And the big thing we're starting to tackle is that blue, which is our use of natural gas. Out at Como Zoo and Conservatory, our kind of flagship regional park here in St. Paul, we're in the process of converting a couple of buildings from an old steam-based hot water system to a geothermal heating and cooling. The great fun we have there is thinking about how to calmly do this transition literally underneath a building full of monkeys. I don't know that anyone has ever said that sentence before. I think I have a couple of times, but here's an image of that state's first all-electric fire truck. This was really a big deal for our city. And as Mayor said, yes, these are more expensive, and yes, they actually just work better. We're really excited to see how long they will last because we think that even the upfront costs being higher, that the life cycle costs will be comparable. Up in our North End neighborhood, we just opened a new community center, the North End Community Center. You can see a couple images here. And Mayor talked about how with our new buildings, we're really kind of going as far as we can. And this building is being heated and cooled by geothermal, and we're about to add some solar on the rooftop. When we think about climate, we think less about things like urban land use, but we've made some really important changes to land use in recent years. We followed closely in our neighbors to the west in Minneapolis in eliminating single-family zoning a couple of years ago. The reason this is important is that a lot of our older building stock, some of those homes are larger, and now, as of right, those older homes can be converted to up to 4 units, whereas before they were only allowed to be 1 unit. And so it really creates more reuse opportunities, among other things. Under the radar, as we tend to be, our single family zoning elimination actually went a bit further than Minneapolis, 4 units as of right and 6 on the corner. In Mayor Carter's time in office, we've built out more than 55 new miles of bikeways so far. Hopefully around downtown, you've seen our capital city bikeway system, and you may have noticed some of the construction going on. We're continuing to build out that system and some of the legs that will connect it to the rest of our system in the city. We get a lot of the kind of typical, like, why are you building bikeways? No one's using them. And we say, well, we need the bikeways because no one's using them because they're not safe enough for people to use yet. And it's what we're seeing is a lot of progress, that as our systems get better, people find them and figure out ways to use them. Mayor talked about EV, so I won't linger there. It was really quite a project because not only we had to work with our partner to deliver this car share service, but we had to build out a car charging system for the car share. And as long as we were doing it, we also built out a public charging network that sits alongside it. And so you can see here, should have been a bigger color differential, but the green charger on the right is for car share vehicles only, and the blue charger on the left is for public charging. We're just about to launch some brand new programs with some new funding that Mayor and Council put in for this year called the Power of Home and Healthy Homes programs. And these programs are all about weatherizing some of our older homes, and then to the degree that we can, moving away from their use of fossil fuels, so technologies like air source heat pumps and similar. And we're focusing on our most energy cost burden residents, and those programs are literally going to launch in the next month. We've partnered in the last few years with Ramsey County here on a series of programs to help folks who are needing that kind of next rung on the ladder in their careers to get into some of these emerging green careers through a few programs, including some at St. Paul College, and one in particular, 2 operated by our local Center for Energy and the Environment, which is focused on residential insulation and energy auditing. And we've had, I think now, over 30 St. Paul residents come through those programs in the last few years, as well as another one put on by Goodwill Easter Seals. I mentioned the dashboard, and I think I got through everything and kept your attention reasonably well. It's a hard thing to do these days. I just want to reiterate the mayor's thanks for all the work that you do. And what he said is really true. A lot of the things that we've been able to do, I didn't think we were going to be able to do. And so having that first thought of like, we got to try is really important. So thanks for everything that you're doing. Appreciate your time, and have a great rest of your conference today.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, right? Thank you so much, Mayor Carter. Thank you so much, Russ and Melissa. This was amazing. She gets a lot of credit. She obviously made this, what you just experienced, happen. I just want to say that it seems like such a perfect way to close. You know, we had such an inspiring talk from Kira at the beginning. We've had so many people speak so eloquently about how important it is for us to never give up. And I hope that you leave this conference feeling energized and empowered to truly keep working to make the impossible possible. And I hope that you will also continue to know that you are not alone, that we will continue to work together. I hope that you will come back next year, but we are going to find ways to stay better connected between these events. We need each other. I feel that way. I can't imagine that you don't all feel that way. We are going to do amazing things. And thank you so much.